I'd like to call to order the third meeting of the 2023 Lottery Fund Task Force to order. If you're in the audience, please, and you have any cell phones, please make sure they're turned off or turned down. Madam Secretary, call the roll.
Senator Boswell, Senator Neal, Senator Tishner, Senator Wilson, Representative Grossberg,
Present.
Representative Rawlings, Representative Riley, Representative Timoney,
Here.
Co-Chair Deneen,
Here.
Co-Chair McCool.
Here.
We do have a quorum. At this time, I'd like to recognize my co-chair.
Thank you,
McCool.
Mr. Chair. I'd like to, Amy Webb, if you're out there somewhere, just want to say happy birthday.
Thank you. My last one in the 40s.
Is there any other member that has any introductions before we start the agenda? All right. First on the agenda is approval of minutes from the July 20th, 2023 meeting. I need a motion to accept the minutes. Is there a motion? I have a motion.
Second.
Second. All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
All in nays? Like sign? Ayes have it. All right, folks, I want to kind of briefly remind everybody the mandate of this task force and what it includes. This task force was set up to bring evaluating and performance of the various scholarships and grant programs funded by the Lottery Trust Fund, and developing possible recommendations and changes related to Lottery Trust Fund to better align the use of the funds with current and future needs. Today we have invited various groups who will help Kentucky students access the use of these scholarships and grant programs to provide the task force with their perspectives. We have several groups that are going to be speaking with us today. We would like to move pretty quickly so that everybody has an opportunity to share their insights with the committee members. So today's format will be more of a roundtable discussion. We'll bring them forward a few at a time. Some of them will be joining us through Zoom. We'll give them time to introduce themselves, ask them some general questions. I believe some of them have been provided with some questions in preparation for this meeting today. And then we'll provide task force members with the opportunity to ask any follow-up questions. First up, I would like to recognize our high school counselors that are with us today through the Zoom meeting. I believe we have Jennifer Cobb, counselor from Hardin County Schools. We have Dan Robbins, principal from Hardin County Schools Early College and Career Center. Amanda Murphy, senior guidance counselor at Johnson Central High School. And Amy Cantrell Webb, curriculum director, Johnson Central High School. Does everybody hear me? Everybody hear our committee just fine that are on the Zoom? At previous meetings, members have expressed an interest in understanding how well high school counselors and staff are aware of our state's programs and the challenges school staff face in helping students become aware and access our state's programs. Being the start of the school year, availability was a challenge, but some staff from Hardin County and Johnson County have graciously agreed to join us remotely at the beginning of their school years. So we're going to kind of dive right in, if you all don't mind, and we'll ask maybe 3 or 4 questions, and we'll, if somebody would like to chime in, just raise your hand, I guess, so we can see you, and make sure that your mics are turned on so that you can hear us and we can hear you. Some of the questions that you all were given, before we get started with those, I believe I've recognized all of you. Please recognize yourself for the record, those that are on the Zoom meeting.
Amy Webb, Johnson Central High School.
Amanda Murphy, Johnson Central High School.
Jennifer Cobb, Hardin County Schools, John Hardin High School.
Dan Robbins, Hardin County Schools, Early College and Career Center.
All right, thank you all for being with us today. You were given some potential questions for the day to kind of help you organize your thoughts and try to help us get some information that you all deal with our high school students every year. So some of those questions, I believe I would like to go down maybe 3 or 4 of those questions myself, and I'll have Co-Chair McCool ask 2 or 3 of those questions. And I'll start with Principal Dan Robbins. Out of all the work hours that you have in the day, how much time do you spend advising your students on post-secondary plans? Do you think this is similar for other school counselors, staff across the state?
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Deneen. It's probably a little bit different for me here at the Early College and Career Center, just because of what we do is really primarily tagged to post-secondary planning. I would say the great majority of my day deals with helping students on advising them on post-secondary plans. Our high school students, and specifically our academy program, earn associate's degrees before graduating high school. So we start with their academic planning for post-secondary during their junior year. And we take a look at those types of things. I know you'll get into questions regarding some of this dual credit scholarship stuff, but we have to stay in tune to all of those things because our students are taking a full college load each semester of college while they're with us for 2 years.
Counselor, Ms. Jennifer Cobb, do you have anything you would like to add to that first question? You may want to turn on there you go.
So yeah, a lot of what we do is post-secondary readiness. I was a college and career coach for the last 4 years. And I would definitely say that I probably spend collectively probably an hour of my day actually doing like one-on-one counseling with students, financial letters that schools have given them, and advising them on maybe what is the best option for them, whether it's going straight into a career, using the Work Ready Scholarship to go to the community college here locally or community colleges around the state, or if that's a 4-year academic program at a university or military. So I would probably say that about an hour or 2 of my day is actually spent one-on-one with kids.
Thank you. Ms. Murphy, of the Kentucky scholarships and grant programs such as CAP, KTG, KEYS, and dual credit Work Ready programs, which are most often discussed with students?
We discuss these with students really frequently. Miss Webb deals with our dual credit scholarships, and she always makes sure that the kids who are in the dual credit classes, that she goes in and help them, get those filled out, make sure that they apply for those to get those prices down for their classes. I talk a lot to kids about KEYS money when they come into my office, and I actually prepared a senior year handbook that has the KEYS money calculation on there so that they know how to calculate what they should be getting, to kind of check that with their account to make sure. Brandon Brown also comes in and does a presentation with our kids and teaches them about KEYS money and all the different, he teaches them about CAP grants, the Kentucky Access Grant. He teaches the Kentucky Tuition Grant. He talks to them about all that. And we have that actually on our schedule for August 31st this year.
That's great. You start the school year basically informing all of your students of what's coming up and what's available to them early on in their senior years. I'd like to move on to Ms. Cantrell Webb. Do you see any issues with the KEYS program, or is there some area of the KEYS program that you would like to, maybe see handled differently or changed?
There really is. And I'm so glad you picked me for this one, because one of the biggest problems that I see is that, our middle income families are essentially being priced out of college in some ways. And so, like, the kids whose families, like, for example, if you have a 2-teacher household and those kids take like the AP test, they get no keys money for that because they're not considered low income. And so you also have this division because you have low income kids that are like, well, we want to take all the AP tests because we get money for it. And I just don't understand, low income kids are going to get more access to grants and financial aid than middle income families, anyways. And so when you take things like keys money and you don't even let your middle income kids get rewarded for passing a test, but you let your lower income kids do, it's really a problem, I think. Those kids are fighting really hard to get money, and a lot of them are being priced right out of college.
Thank you. Representative McCool, Co-Chair McCool, if you would take maybe questions 5, 6, and 7, and
Thank you, Senator. I appreciate it very much,
share
Co-Chair.
with him who to ask.
All right. On the first one, if I could, I guess I'll reach out to Amanda about the FAFSA. We often hear that there's a lot of FAFSA money left on the table because they don't fill out complete the FAFSA. What's your experience with that? How do you communicate that to the students? And certainly, if you have any thoughts and process on how we can improve the completion of the FAFSA application.
Okay, the way I deal with that here is I have Brandon Brown come in again with Kia, and he does FAFSA workshops during the day with the students, and he also does them in the evenings with the students. And then later in the year, Big Sandy comes in. They do the same thing. So I already have 2 FAFSA workshops set up with Mr. Brown, and then later I'll also set those up with Big Sandy. This year that we've got the FAFSA Reform Act, so it's a little different this year. It's not going to open in October like usual. It'll open in January. So our timeline's slightly different, but we really push that. I talk with students one-on-one about completing that quite often. Also, I probably helped at least 50 kids last year individually complete their FAFSAs. I spent a ton of time on that. As far as getting kids to complete it, I think I'm hoping that Reform Act will really help with that. I'm going to a training on that, but I don't know what that's going to entail, but it's supposed to cut down the amount of questions they're asked. I think they get overwhelmed with it and don't know what to put on some of it. They get confused. So I'm really hoping that helps that. And then as far as money left on the table, obviously more kids completing it would be helpful, but and I don't know if there's anything can be done about this, but just like Ms. Webb said, the middle class kids are being priced out of college. She's exactly correct about that. So, like my personal kids, they'll get $0 financial aid. So a lot of kids don't even feel a need to fill out a FAFSA because they know they're not going to get any money. They're not going to get any help. So that's another reason kids don't fill it out, is because they think they're not going to get anything from it other than student loans.
I believe we have a question from Representative Timmons.
Thank you, Chairman. Quick question, quick follow-up to the FAFSA question. Yesterday, we had a presentation from Dr. Thompson and his group, and Kentucky Stats had been compiling FAFSA completion rates. And this is a big question. It's not necessarily an important question, but it's a kind of a big 10,000 feet up question. One of the areas in Kentucky that is really, really lagging behind on completion of FAFSA is the 606. What are some reasons why you think the 606 is falling so far behind in completion of the FAFSA? Because it does stand out as a region of Kentucky that does not complete the FAFSA.
One reason I would also think is because some of the programs that a lot of our students like to do don't qualify. Like, for example, a lot of our boys want to go to lineman school. You can't use financial aid for lineman school. So then they just don't see a point in doing it. Another reason is I think that they are really intimidated by it. and they have a fear of filling it out. Like they find it hard to do, confusing to do. But I'm hoping that Reform Act will help with that. I guess we'll see. We'll see if that changes anything in January.
I'll add to that though. I think there are several different aspects there. I mean, one of them is we have a huge population of children who do not live with family, and those FAFSA forms require a lot of family knowledge. I mean, just for example, I've still got a child that I'm helping right now who she can't get her KIA verification done because her dad is in prison and her mother, I don't know where her mother is. And she basically raises herself. And I have had every single year to go and deal separately with KIA because she is truly an independent minor. We have kids that are being raised by grandparents and they're not on their tax form. So there's a lot of tax information that's required on FAFSA. So when you have, I mean, we have around 30% of our students don't live with a custodial parent, I believe it is, at our last meeting. So those kids don't even begin to know where to find information on themselves. And that is a really huge problem.
I'd like to thank you both for those very insightful answers. I mean, that was exactly what I was looking for as far as real world, boots on the ground answers to that question, and you guys provided it. Thank you.
Can I piggyback one more additional thing? I'm sorry.
Yes.
Okay. So, also, I think that the FAFSA is really easy to complete if you live in a 2-parent household and everybody does their taxes, everybody plays by the rules in the home. And it is not so, it is very difficult if parents haven't completed their taxes and the child suffers from that. Or if, you don't fit into these traditional boxes that we think of. And so we do a really good job of reaching out to KIA, our TRIO representatives at the community colleges. That's where they're housed. And we have representatives that come in and help. But I think that it's very intimidating. And another thing is that it is also incredibly difficult to find anybody with answers for these children that don't fit into these traditional boxes. I mean, I wear my KIA rep out, I feel like, with trying to get us some help with that. And so it's just, it's not, I don't feel like that it always is easy to do. And it's also like you can't find answers sometimes because we have those independent children that just, they don't fit into a traditional box.
Are you seeing the same issues with foster care, kids in foster care?
Absolutely, yes. I mean, I have students that they've been out of high school for 2 years, and the reason that they didn't go to college is because they've been independent and nobody can really answer them on how to fill out a FAFSA, like, because they don't fit into a traditional thing. And like, they'll still contact me and they'll say, well, we're still trying. So, and 2 of those students that I keep in contact with were foster children, or one of them was completely independent because her father was incarcerated and her mother was deceased. So it's just finding like people to help those children that don't fit into boxes.
Thank you.
If I might add, Senator Deneen,
yes.
Speaking from, I did FAFSA. I completed it for both my children. One just graduated college, one that's going into college. I completed it, but there really was no reason for me to. We knew that we were not eligible for anything, but I did it because I'm an educator and because we push and we say everyone go fill out the FAFSA. My brother, on the other hand, kids never did. He didn't do it because there's no reason for me to ever fill it out. There's no tie to it. So if we're trying to push for FAFSA and we legitimately have some reasons to do it, why is there not a keys tag to FAFSA? So if you want your keys money that you all are pushing and trying to get kids to say, this is your money you've earned, the only way you get it is to make sure that you complete FAFSA. It is part of it. Obviously, I think there could be some tie-in a little bit. That is not a, huge amount. I know that's why we're here talking about it, but it would at least maybe prompt someone to say, well, if I'm going to use that keys money, that I got to make sure that I get FAFSA completed.
That's a very good point. Thank you for that. Go ahead.
I too want to thank you all. That is valuable information that we can use as we go forward, and I'm grateful that you provided it to us. The next question, if I could have Dan Robbins to consider the dual credit and work ready dual credit scholarship helps high school students toward post-secondary education goals while in high school. What experience have you had with this, and is it worthwhile?
Yeah, I'll first say that these two programs are phenomenal. I know that this is not something that happens in every state, so I do want to applaud this committee for any work that you all been doing to make sure that that's happening. That is phenomenal. I think we need to make sure that as the new biennium gets ramped up, is that we continue to do the work that we are for the last 2 years, where students are receiving 2 dual credit scholarships their junior year and 2 dual credit scholarships their senior year. I know that is set to end after this school year, so I just ask that that be something to be considered to add on. The work that the Work Ready Scholarship is doing, where students can earn 2 free career and technical classes a school year, again, that is phenomenal. It is a big deal for us, especially here at EC3. Our students are earning dual credit every school year, starting their freshman year in career and technical education courses. So without those scholarships, our students would not be doing that. Obviously, that is tied to the post-secondary readiness indicator, so that is very helpful when we have all of our students taking some dual credit college class. So we want to make sure that those can continue, and any work that this committee can do to guarantee that would be greatly appreciated. Obviously, with all the good things, there are always things that can improve. The issues that we have with those scholarships, the people at Kia are phenomenal, but we send emails to them, and we know that their offices can be limited in the amount of people that are working, but we sometimes don't hear back from them for months. And then by the time they reply back to us, we're 55 kids past that. We're moving on, but they do get to it. I just wish that there was a better system, maybe, that would allow the high school counselors, transition coaches, that could go in and help those students to set those scholarships without getting locked out, or the password issue, or some of those types of things. We are working in our own district to improve some of the issues, but we know that a lot of that is tied to social security numbers. And we do have families that do not want to give those social security numbers. They are scared of identity theft, and we all know that is a real something to be really scared about. So sometimes we struggle to get students signed up properly because we don't have a social security number in the system.
Thank you.
Thank you. I've got one final question, and turn it back over to our chair, if that's okay. And this is for anybody or everybody. Just, are you aware of the student's right to know that's on CPE, Council Post-Secondary's website? Have you heard about that? The student's right to know. Has been beneficial in help guiding the students toward their post-secondary choice.
Yes.
Any other members there? Any of the other folks joining us through Zoom want to take that question as well? Are all of you familiar with those?
I'm not as familiar with it. The one thing I do want to say, though, is we have actively started in 8th grade here working to get social security numbers in, because when I took over as curriculum director, we had around over 1/4 of our 1,100 kids did not have a proper social security number because parents did not want to give that out. And some of them won't even give the right phone numbers. But we started in 8th grade trying to work on that and get kids educated, because honestly, until we can educate the parents, we have parent nights too, where the parents come in, and you're talking about the students' rights to know and things like that, but the parents also need to understand, because until they understand what this means, it's also a problem, because they don't encourage the kids to take it, and they're afraid of even the free classes. They're afraid they're going to get stuck with a bill, and we get probably 100 calls in a month when dual credit starts up, wanting to know how much of this is really going to cost, even though I send the paperwork home, even though I have those meetings. And so, we live in the 606, which is not, the percentage of people with a college education is not extremely high. And so it's very hard to make parents understand the way dual credit works and why these kids should be taking it. And that's why we started in the 8th grade, going over there and talking to them and trying to steer them into a path if you're wanting this, you can get a full year of college or more for free. So, and going back to what he said, I do beg of you to keep the scholarships going, because the 2 a year is wonderful, and we still have kids that take additional classes, and we end up having to ask donors to pay for them. So we took up about $7,500 2 years ago to pay for kids who were paying $300 a class, and as of right now, we only have $1,000 left. So it's much, much needed. Thank you.
Okay. Well, thank you all. Just the last, if anybody that has joined us through the Zoom meetings, if anybody have any final thoughts or any suggestions you think this task force should consider before we move on to the next group. We just have just a few minutes left here with you all. Is there anything that you all would make any suggestions to this committee?
Yeah, this is Dan Robbins again. Senator Deneen again. I told you I would be full of a lot of things. So one of the other things I think that has to be considered in regards to KEYS money, with all of this work that you all have been doing to grant students the opportunity to earn college credits, we have to understand that students are earning those college credits and thus could be able to exit college faster than 4 years. The KEYS scholarship is available for 8 semesters. Okay, if a student does all this dual credit in high school and can graduate college prior to 8 semesters, then they are likely leaving that merit-based scholarship that they earned on the table. It's really not fair to them nor their families that this is money that they've earned, yet they never have access to using it. I just ask that maybe if there's any consideration that potentially allow the students and the families to have a little more ownership in that KEYS money to decide when they want to use it. For instance, my daughter just graduated college. She's 21 years old. She finished in 3 years. She has 2 semesters left on the table, almost $3,000 that's sitting there that will never get touched. But instead, I paid for it for her to graduate and finish, but she never has access to that money that she earned, and we can't ever get it. So I didn't want it. I just wanted it to help pay for her bill for college. So those are things like that I wish that as we continue to promote and we do dual credit, all the great work you all are doing, we are potentially allowing students then to leave money on the table that they never have access to because they're graduating earlier than those 8 semesters.
And I would also, and I think that's a fabulous point. And I also want to go back and beg again that you take the restriction off of the bonuses and that you allow any income child, because I assure you, just because they are middle income, that doesn't mean they have some kind of huge leg up. These kids are struggling to pay for college. And, Mrs. Murphy and I helped a kid yesterday who's got a 31 on his ACT, and he told her he didn't know that if he was going to go to college because his parents are not well and it's too expensive for them. And we've got to do something to get those kids more help, because you don't want to be pricing a kid who has a 31 on his ACT out of going to college.
Mm-hmm. I'd like to thank all of you for your time in preparing for the meeting today. Thank you for joining us. I know it's a busy time of school year. Is there any final questions from any committee members before we allow our next group of presenters? All right, with none seen, thank you all for joining us, and I wish you the very best in this upcoming school year. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for listening.
All right, KCTCS and adult education. I believe our state's Work Ready Kentucky Scholarship is specifically designed to assist Kentuckians to obtain an industry-recognized certificate, diploma, or associate's degree in one of the top 5 high-demand workforce sectors. We've also recently expanded the use of KEYS scholarship to include approved registered apprenticeships and qualified workforce training programs. To bring our task force a perspective of helping Kentuckians get into important careers, we have invited the acting president of the Kentucky Community and Technical College System and the executive director of Kentucky Adult Education. Welcome to the committee, gentlemen. Please introduce yourselves and make sure your mics are on when you do so.
Yes, sir. I'm Dr. Larry Ferguson. I am the current president of Ashland Community and Technical College, but here and today I'm here in the capacity of acting president of KCTCS.
Good afternoon. I am Dr. John Gregory, the Executive Director of the Office of Adult Education. Good afternoon.
Thank you. Both of your systems provide important services to the state. Could you give a quick, high-level, maybe explanation of the types of programs you do offer and how those are applied?
Well, we have a three-pronged mission of things that we actually do at KCTCS. A particular interest probably to this committee is the work that we do supporting the workforce for the 5 sectors that fuel our economy here in the state of Kentucky. That is a large part of the work that we do. In addition to that, we provide customized training for thousands of employers across Kentucky, upskilling employers, taking them to a different level when necessary. And then we also have, as part of our mission, to help with transfer. You know, with the number of locations that we have across the state, it provides great access geographically for people to start college and at a much lesser cost than it would be to go to any of our regional universities or our land-grant schools. So that's our primary mission of what we do.
So the Office of Adult Education, so I will start off with a qualifying statement. We do significantly more than just the GED. The GED is absolutely significant in the Commonwealth of Kentucky in this fine state, but we do exceedingly more than that. The mission of the office is to assist the citizens in this state to improve the quality of their lives through 3 components: the education piece, training piece, and employment piece. So what's significant to this is that we have a federal performance requirement that is specifically focused on the transition to college. Not a whole bunch of people know that, but that is a performance requirement that has been on the books since 2014. So we are certainly in the business of the education, which includes the GED, but it also includes the transition to college and the retention in college, training, and employment. So that is the 101 of what we do as far as adult education across the Commonwealth of Kentucky.
And Dr. Gregory, I'll add that we have a very close relationship, KCTCS does, of course, with adult education, with many of our adult education centers across the state being located on KCTCS campuses.
Of all of the various scholarship programs that are available, which ones do your systems utilize the most?
Well, I will add to the comment of the counselor who was on with the committee just a little while ago. I cannot thank the legislature enough for the Work Ready Scholarship and the Dual Credit Scholarship. They have had an undescribable impact on our ability to perform what we're being tasked to do. And I will say that specifically with the Work Ready Scholarship, again, catering to those 5 industry sectors that we have so much focus on, getting people interested in those careers, coming back, getting that post-secondary credential, whether it be short-term, could be a matter of weeks, could be a semester, could be a degree, could be a lot of things to make sure that we're fulfilling those needs. As this committee knows, why that scholarship is so important, you know, our workforce participation rate in the state of Kentucky is dismal. Also, if you look, I know that CP can provide this data, but our college going rate continues to diminish. So it is very critical that we provide access and means for these folks to get the education they need to fuel our workforce to make sure that we're successful. So for us, the Work Ready Scholarship is critical. The Dual Credit Work Ready Scholarship is also critical, as was said earlier and to the committee, you know, getting those high school students the opportunity to take 2, 3, 4 of those career technical education classes while they're still in high school prepares many of them to go straight into a career field, straight from high school, or to transition on for additional education at the post-secondary level, either with KCTCS or with one of our colleges or universities. So those are very, very important to us. The other thing, I know there was some conversation about keys. Keys is also important, but I will say my perspective is, you know, we haven't changed the allotment of that since 1998. It is becoming less and less of a factor. And to be honest, the Dual Credit Scholarship and the Work Ready Scholarship is having much more impact than keys.
Exactly.
And as far as I'm concerned, the Work Ready Scholarship is absolutely significant, but there are some problematic components of the Key Scholarship with respect to working age Kentuckians, which is primarily the population that we serve as far as the Office of Adult Education is concerned. Specifically, it's time sensitive. So the requirements state that an individual has to use that within 5 years of completing the high school process. So if you look at the data, the mass majority of the individuals that complete the GED are between the ages of 25 and 44. So if you do the simple math, that exceeds 5 years from high school. And then they must use it 5 years post completing the GED. That just does not work for adult learners and working age Kentuckians with hips. So, but if you break that down, we serve approximately, or we can serve approximately 2.7 million people out of 4.4 million across this state. So that is significantly so problematic. It's valuable, absolutely, but it's time sensitive and it is age restricted, which causes a problem for the population that I serve.
Representative McCool, you have a question?
Yes, sir. Thank you, Chair. And I appreciate what you're saying, and I see that, and we're trying to look at those options because a lot of the Pell Grant, the keys, all that is good. We don't need to stop that, but at the same time, that's geared toward a different group of folks. But I want to ask about the Work Ready Scholarship. It runs out. Now, besides, we probably need to put more money in there, but are there also some parameters that we need to look at to ensure that we're getting the best bang for our buck?
Representative McCool, I'll attempt to answer that for you. You know, if you look at the last year, there were 10,400 applications for the Work Ready Scholarship, 4,600 recipients, and as I'm sure this committee knows, at a certain point, we run out of funding of that in every year. You know, we have thousands of students every summer that could qualify for that. They can't qualify because the money is gone. One thing I would hope that the committee may consider when looking at the Work Ready Scholarship is it's not based on income or GPA, and there may be original reasons why that was done, but a significant number of the folks who are accessing that scholarship have a household income of over $100,000. So do you need more money in it, or do you need to limit it to some degree to those who are having access for it? Now, speaking only for KCTCS, you know, the average student comes out with less than $5,000 debt. So if you're coming from a family income of that level, you could afford to pay it and not have a lot of debt without getting the Work Ready Kentucky Scholarship. And I think that's something the committee should consider. I mean, roughly the numbers I was given from our folks is about 40% of our folks who are getting that scholarship do come from a household earning a higher wage like that. So that's something that we consider. Do you need more money, or you just need better parameters on who's actually getting it so you don't run out of the money?
Thank you very much. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Let's see here. From your experience, do you have any other thoughts or suggestions that you think the task force needs to consider? I know, KCTCS is on the front lines of where we are at in this Commonwealth. It is apparently clear. We have a lot more individuals now looking for certifications, looking for opportunities to move up in their employment, to get raises. They may not be finishing a 4-year degree, and they're coming through you. They're coming to you for those skill sets that are really fueling many of the companies that come into the Commonwealth and that are on their way or already here. I have seen a great deal of expansion of KCTCS's roles in our high schools and really with the manufacturing sector of what their needs are. Can you kind of elaborate on some of those changes, just briefly, that you all are seeing? And I'm sure that the adult education side of this is coming into play along with this workforce development side of things. Could you just expand on some of the things KCTCS is kind of that shift that is taking place right now?
Yes, sir. As I mentioned, when we started talking, we have that three-pronged mission, and we do have a lot of students who come to us who are going to transfer on to one of the 8 universities, colleges for that level of training. But the significant number of what we do are folks who really, they want to do, think of the trades. They want to do something quicker, faster, and so that they can enter the workforce. And we know if you look at the labor market information that's out there, that's where the most needs are. You mentioned advanced manufacturing. Healthcare is another one that can be done fairly quickly. And I'll give you an example just from my college, which is in Ashland. We do welding training, folks, 24 hours a day. 24 hours a day. I've got folks learning how to weld at 3 o'clock in the morning. I do it on Saturday. I do it on Sunday. I have more booths than any other college in the state of Kentucky. None of those folks go toward a degree. They're going towards the short-term training they can get to go to work, and we work closely there with the union, the local 248. If they take a couple of classes with us, they can sit for their test and get credit towards their apprenticeship. Those type of relationships are becoming more and more important to our role within the state. And not that transfer is not important. It is, because I tell my folks, my faculty and staff at the college, to be honest, everything we do is workforce. It doesn't matter if you're coming to us to become a welder or you're becoming there to become a physician, which we've had people that have gone that far. Ultimately, they want to get a job. I don't have any good jokes, but one of my jokes is no student comes to me and says they're there for intellectual enlightenment. They're not, okay? Now, if I was the president of Stanford, which I wouldn't qualify to be probably, maybe somebody would come to me on a trust fund and say, I'm here for intellectual enlightenment. Now, they get that as part of being there to some degree, but they're there to get a job, and that is the primary function that we have there. One thing I would say, sir, that I would want, if you were thinking of suggestions, maybe with the Work Ready Scholarship, we might consider beyond those 5 independent sectors, those sectors that we focus on as a state. We have shortages, as I'm sure you've heard, in child care workers and police officers. And the biggest one for me that I'm concerned about is teachers. By 2030, that demand is going to increase exponentially by over 5%, 37,000 job openings. This is in the state of Kentucky. So if we were able to offer that in some of these other areas, particularly in education with teachers, I think that there would be more people taking advantage of it, and we could increase workforce participation in those areas. So that is a big one that we're concerned about, is hopefully that there would be some sort of expansion there. The other thing I will add, since I have the opportunity to say it, as far as KCTCS, as you know, right now, which I think is perfectly good and fine, students only pay 50% of what it costs for our regular tuition, which is the lowest in the state, to take any of these dual credit courses. But that is not codified into law. That is just within the budget. So it's in the biannual budget. So that's one thing we would hope that we could maintain that. But every budget cycle, we're having to decide what that is, and it would be very welcomed by us if the legislature would consider codifying that into law, so it is 50%. We're not asking for more, but after this particular year, it will go down. I think it drops to 30-some-odd%, and that makes it difficult to pay for. Even though we are the lowest tuition cost in the state of Kentucky, there are costs associated, of course, with delivering education. Right. And at the 50% mark, we're roughly at a break-even mark where we can do it, we can benefit the students, we can benefit the Commonwealth. We're not making money or revenue off of it, but we can do it at that level. But if it goes lower than that, then it actually costs our institutions just to deliver it.
I've heard from several different folks on post-secondary education. Many of them are more and more are taking online courses, and the traditional brick and mortar may not be as prevalent in those situations, but KCTCS and vocational school is always going to need that, in my opinion, the brick and mortar, the keeping up to date with the needs of our factories and our manufacturers, and those type of facilities need to be upgraded, in my opinion.
Yes, sir. I mean, there is a demand which has increased, as you could imagine, with COVID, for online instruction. Typically, those are in the gen ed areas.
Right.
But listen, I can't teach a welder. I mean, I have welding simulators. Trust me, I do. But I cannot teach a welder how to weld, online. So when you're looking at hands-on, I call them the trade, the skills trades. Those things require facilities, and as like everything in life. Exponentially, the costs for those programs have increased as we've seen inflation and all those things.
Dr. Gregory, do you have anything to add?
Most certainly, sir. So I think of this in terms of backwards planning. So you look at where you want to be as far as the workplace, and then you backwards plan and work that. So we are in the process of synchronizing what we do in a quote-unquote classroom and the training component in the workplace. So we have increased significantly this past fiscal year in that space. So that is something that needs to continue. Secondly, I would like to see consideration for some additional subpopulations. Second and fair chance when we're speaking in terms of these scholarships. There is some of this language that is restricted, something that is near and dear to my heart, veterans. I spent my entire adult life wearing boots until 3 years ago. So those populations, I think, need to be considered when we speak in terms of the transition to college and the post-secondary space, because that's a significant component of what's going on in the Commonwealth. And I think sometimes we don't think in those terms as far as those subpopulations are concerned.
I agree with you. Thank you so much. Is there any questions from the committee members for this group this time? Thank you both for joining us today. We appreciate it, and it's very enlightening. So thank you very much.
Senator, if you could, there would, just because the last group talked about it, I would think it would be interesting to this committee about the FAFSA completion. The actual number that Kentucky leaves on the table is $54 million a year because of students who do not complete the FAFSA. And we know through research, and I can get this for you if you want the actual source, it's the National College Attainment Network, 90% of high school seniors who do complete a FAFSA immediately enter post-secondary education after they graduate. If they don't, they just don't. And so for us, I know there have been some bills that have been explored from the legislature about that, but I do think that's something that we need to consider is how do we help those people, even the difficult populations, if there's a way to get out of doing it, but how do we help them? $54 million left on the table.
I agree with you. I think all we can do to remove some barriers there to help some of those folks that aren't currently getting those
Yes, sir.
that assistance, we need to work towards that. So thanks again, gentlemen. Thank you so much. Next up, we have KASFAA and AIKCU. At our previous meeting, we heard from the Council of Post-Secondary Education about financial aid programs and our system of public post-secondary institutions. Joining us today to offer us additional perspectives is a member of the Kentucky Association of Student Financial Aid Administrators and the president of the Association of Independent Kentucky Colleges and Universities. So thank you for being patient. We've had gone a little bit longer with a couple of the groups before you, and I would like to get to you all and hear your perspective on this as well. So please identify yourselves, and we'll have a few questions for you.
Thank you, Senator. We certainly appreciate the opportunity to be here. We certainly like our acronyms as well. So my name is Mark Messingslugger. My main job is the Director of Financial Aid up at Thomas More University. Non-paying job, and the reason I'm here today at Knight Pass, past president of the Kentucky Association of Student Financial Aid. Tell them to check their mics. We represent about 300 financial aid.
Just check your mic and make sure that green light is turned on for us.
There it is. I thought it was.
All
Sorry
right,
about that.
there you go.
Looked like it was lit up. It was not. So we represent 300 financial aid administrators across the state of Kentucky at the colleges and universities, post-secondary sector, at about 70 of those institutions. So that is my role here today.
And good afternoon. My name is Mason Dyer, president of IQ. That's the Association of Independent Kentucky Colleges and Universities. We represent 18 independent nonprofit colleges and universities across the state.
All right, gentlemen, we've got a couple of questions here, and kind of similar to what we've been asking the other groups, not far off base here. Do you guys see any snags that keep Kentuckians from being able to use our financial aid programs as far as your perspective is?
So I'd like to start with the what has come up with the previous two groups, and that's the FAFSA attainment, the FAFSA completion. So we are a little bit concerned about the FAFSA Simplification Act that was referenced with our high school colleagues.
Starting in December of this year, which will start with the 24-25 academic year, the FAFSA is going to go through the largest overhaul it has ever done. The idea is to make it simpler or more simple for our families and students to be able to access that form, make it more streamlined for them to complete it. And so I would like to offer as well that we heard from our high school colleagues that they're not sure where to go for the answers sometimes. And I'd like to offer our schools, our institutions of higher education, we do have those answers. My colleagues at CASFA, we're eager to help those families and those high school counselors, along with our partners at KIA. We always have those answers. If we don't have those answers, we have channels and we have avenues up the line at the U.S. Department of Education to get those answers for those folks. So we can certainly be an asset and a resource to those folks who don't have anywhere else to turn as far as FAFSA completion. So that's one thing. We are nervous with the FAFSA, the new FAFSA coming online, simply because it's a federal form, and we've seen sometimes what happens with those in the first year of implementation. So we're a little bit nervous from an administration standpoint how that's going to roll out, but we have been promised up and down that it will be easier and more simple for those families to complete. Maybe not so much for us on the administration side, but we'll work that out. And so that's one issue. I would like to echo as far as the KEYS money. So it was mentioned earlier that the KEYS money, the amounts that students receive through KEYS money is codified in statute. And so it's a little bit harder to change that year by year. And so that amount has not changed since the program was designed in 1998. So we're going into our 26th year of the same funding level for KEYS students. So when you hear our colleagues talk about middle-class families being priced out of college, that's what's happening after 26 years. And so these kids' parents, in many cases, got the same amount of KEYS dollars as they are receiving now. You received a presentation from our folks at our colleagues at KIA at the last meeting that mentioned that by statute about 45% of lottery funds get earmarked towards the KEYS program. But at the current funding levels, the usage rate is only about 36%. So doing some math there, we could easily increase those amounts by 25% and still be right at, if not under, the statutory limit of 45% to still be fully funded and not take away money from anybody else. So that's from my view, we could easily increase KEYS by 25% and still not actually need additional funding for that program or run the risk of it running out of money for those folks. So I'll leave it at that for now. I'll let Mason answer that question.
That's why you brought the expert in first. We are as well concerned about the changes to FAFSA and what that implementation is going to look like. There's some technical things that I don't want to get into here because I don't quite understand them fully myself till they come down and start going through. But I think that's a concern. I think just this idea that students don't always know what's out there, and the counselor spoke to that. I know they're not on the line anymore, but I appreciate them being here and talking about that. People don't understand that 99% of our students, nobody's paying full price. They see the sticker price and they may automatically write that off. But once you start adding in the federal programs, the state programs, and institutional aid, college can be much more affordable than people realize. So our institutions on average provide about $17,000 in institutional aid on top of whatever they may be getting students may be getting from the state and the federal government. So, and also I want to say thanks to you all. These programs are incredibly important to our students. CAP, we focus primarily on the big three, CAP, KTG, and KEYS. Our students received about $72 million in fiscal 22 from those programs. It's incredibly important to our students, and you all are doing well by Kentucky families, and so appreciate the General Assembly for that.
Do you all, either one of you, do you see any issues on the horizon on a broader field of the student financial aid, maybe just beyond the FAFSA process here? Is there anything that you all may see coming down the pipe that we can be aware of?
Sure. Two things. The overall cost, of course, that's a hot topic in today's society, is the cost of higher education. And so I expected one of the questions from this body today to be what are we doing at our institutions to help lower that cost or keep it in check? So sorry if I jumped the gun here.
No, you're right on target. You go right ahead,
I
sir.
might be. So I've got a graphic that I developed that I actually shared with your counterparts in Washington, D.C. as well. And that is kind of looking at the pie of tuition and charges that our students are, the charges from 2018 to 2023. So in that 5-year span, what are the sources of aid? Where does it come from to get to that 100% of tuition and fees? And so the state grants, and I will applaud this legislative body again, state grants have actually been level. So in those 5 years, they have stated about 7.5%, which means that as college cost has increased, you all have matched that at a commensurate rate. And so I appreciate that. My point to the folks in D.C. was that the federal grants have fallen in percentage by a couple of points, so they're not completely holding up their end of the bargain. But the bigger piece is from the institutions, and specifically from the private institutions. And I'm speaking from Thomas More, but all 18 private schools. What are we doing to help control the cost? I am not unique at Thomas More. We make a concerted effort to only increase tuition by a maximum of 3% each year. That's typically common across all of our private institutions. Even in this era, in the last few years of increasing inflation, we have made it a point to keep it within that 3% tuition increase range, even if it means not necessarily having cost of living increases sometimes for our staff and faculty. And so back to my graphic in terms of costs, how does where do the resources come from to get to that 100% of tuition and fees? The amount that comes from the institution in terms of our institutional dollars and scholarships has gone up by 8% in the last 5 years. So we've gone from 54% at Thomas More to 62% just in the last 8 years in terms of fulfilling those costs of tuition. And so that's what we're doing on a day-to-day basis, outside from private fundraising to enhance our buildings. We're building a new college of business completely by private funded, and so those are the types of things that we're running into to help control the costs of education. So back to your original question. Sorry, this turned into a long-winded answer, but your original question was, what do we foresee on the horizon? And that is, of course, the higher cost that increases. But the other concern of ours is what we call the enrollment cliff, and that's just simply the demographic of that age group. So we know that the student population that is going to be reaching the age of 18 years old, the current juniors in high school, is the smallest class that we will see in a number of decades. And then after that, it will start to trickle upwards in terms of demographic trends. But we've got the same number of institutions. We're all fighting each other for the same students. And from a capitalistic standpoint, that's a good thing. That means competition. And so when you look at 8% in terms of what the institutions are offering to help control those costs, it's a good thing for the market. Privately, it's a concern for us at the institutions where we're going to find that money to help cover those costs for those students.
Do you see more and more students using the CAPS scholarship and the Work Ready that are attending your school?
So we have a total head count. So every student that attends our university is about 2,000. This year, a quarter of them, so 500, are going to be high school dual credit students, most of which use the dual credit and Work Ready scholarships, yes.
Okay. Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Do you have any final thoughts to add that might enlighten the council here or the committee before we...
I will say that, there's sometimes a misperception that rich kids or affluent kids go to private colleges, and that may be what you see in the mainstream press, but we're not Harvard here in Kentucky. So 42% of our students are Pell recipients. I talked with Kia this morning, and it looks like in this past year, our CAP recipients, the dollar amount went up fairly substantially thanks to the investment that the legislature made in the last biennium. So these are incredibly important. Our institutions are trying to hold costs down. Across the sector, we're seeing tuition increases moderated at about 2 to 3% a year. We have run some lean operations. We've got some great presidents, some great institutions. I will say, as you're thinking about these programs, what I would most hope is that the attention on the need-based programs isn't taken away as you're looking at all these other programs. Mm-hmm. We've got now 9 of our 18 institutions have implemented some sort of promise program where a full Pell student is going to pay no tuition based on the stacking of the different financial aid programs. They'll cover whatever's left, just like many of our public counterparts do. So it's incumbent, or it's important, I guess, that they're looking for those amounts to stay the same. We'd love for them to go up. But if you can keep that commitment to the low-income students, that's incredibly important. The keys piece is also, we are hearing the same thing, that the middle-class students are getting kind of priced out of the market. So if you can find a way to do that, we would be wholeheartedly supportive of increasing keys. So, but thank you very much for your work and your attention to this issue. We appreciate you.
Thank you. And I agree with you. The small colleges, being a Georgetown College graduate myself, are doing a phenomenal job. I know Thomas More and others across the state are doing a great job. We have several graduates of our smaller college systems right here in Frankfort and throughout in leadership roles, but producing good products. So I want to thank you both for all you do. Is there any questions from committee members? All right, seeing none. Thank you, gentlemen, very much.
Thank you very much.
Our next meeting will be on Thursday, September the 21st at 3 p.m. So please, committee members, mark your calendars. That's Thursday, September 21st at 3 p.m. And pretty true to the time, I thought we would be done today. All right, we're pretty close to 4 o'clock there, just a couple minutes over. Is there a motion to adjourn? Second. All right, we are done for the day.